Congressman, welcome to the program. Thank you so much. And to Mr. Smith as well. Thank you for joining us. Congressman, I wanted to ask you, you're preparing for the State of the Union tonight, and I know that guests say a lot. And as I understand it, Mr. Smith is your guest this evening. Tell me why you made that choice.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be on, Dana. I hope I get to see you while you're here in the swamp. But I know you and I both would prefer to be back in Texas. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here from with my friend Scott Smith. We've gotten to know each other pretty well since about 18 months ago. I reached out to him when the news had broken about what had occurred in Loudoun County. Now, side note, I'm a proud Texan, family since the 1850s. But I was displaced. I actually grew up in Loudoun County. I took my SATs in schools that are right down the road from where Scott and his family lived, and where they had to experience this unfortunate and frankly completely unacceptable attack on their family. So I reached out to Scott because I didn't want to talk about his family or his daughter without talking to him before I was going after Merrick Garland. Scott was happy to have me go after Merrick Garland, so I did. And so we've become friends, and I've been following his family and want to support them. And here's the message heading into the State of the Union. We don't need a federal government that is weaponized against the American people, and that's what we have right now.
That's
We
true.
have an FBI that wanted to turn Scott Smith into a domestic terrorist, put him on a list because he dared to go to a school board meeting, challenge that school board for what had happened to his daughter. Look, I think Scott is a saint. God forbid the school board that I went to go talk to after something like that happened. I think Scott handled himself well, and yet he's the one that ended up on the floor, bloodied and with handcuffs. So I wanted Scott to be here with me. I want Joe Biden to have to know that Scott is there and to know that it was the Joe Biden FBI that wanted to turn Scott into a domestic terrorist for simply wanting to protect his daughter.
That's an excellent point. And Scott Smith there with Congressman Chip Roy attending the State of the Union tonight. And Mr. Smith, we've prayed for your family, and our hearts broke, and we were all outraged for you. I think a lot of us wanted to go right there with you to that school board meeting. We watched the video, we've read the stories. Most families cannot even fathom enduring what your family has endured. And to see you are the one who has been punished because you're trying to protect your child. Talk to me about what your fight has been like, just simply to fulfill your role as a dad.
It's been a long 18-month fight. What we found is that nobody was doing their jobs correctly. And in order to get justice for not just my family and my daughter, but all the other kids across America, we had to step into that role and start doing other people's jobs for them. And ever since then, we haven't stopped. My wife and I spend every day trying to figure out how to protect our children. Again, not just ours, but everyone's. And what's most important to me, and I really appreciate having Chip, invite me, is I want to be the lightning rod to all moms and dads across America that you need to stand up and protect the children and, get the government out of our lives and, stop indoctrinating our children. And I just want to be, the person to tell the moms and dads, don't be afraid, stand up. There's good people that will surround you and protect you.
Yes.
We have to do this as a whole. It can't just be a few.
And to that point, and that's Scott Smith, whose daughter. And for those who are familiar with the story, I think most everyone is. And there were a lot of details with it. His daughter was sexually assaulted at a Loudoun County school bathroom. And from what I understand, and this is what what parents were trying to uncover at these school board meetings, it didn't seem like the school was very forthcoming. If you have a male student who says that they identify as female, then they can have access to those spaces. And it makes, I mean, we went through this. We had a family member, a cousin of mine. We went through this, a school in, southern Missouri. We went through this very thing. And it did not have, obviously, your outcome to where you were, if, you're in, nobody in my family was in cuffs and on the floor bleeding, as the congressman was saying. But this policy, there were accusations that the school board and the board of supervisors, they were slow to act. They weren't forthcoming with information. I know that, you really had to fight just to get some basic information as to how this attack was even allowed to happen, not just once, but twice. Have they been, Mr. Smith, and then I'm going to go back to you, Congressman, has the school finally decided that they want to be a little bit more forthcoming in with this information leading up to explaining how this happened?
Not one bit. If anything, it's just more of the same. They fought the special grand jury investigation tooth and nail to the very end. They tried to shut it down several times. Thank God they weren't successful with that, and the special grand jury was able to finish, and the report was scathing across, all agencies. We're still fighting with them to try to get, they did an independent investigation of what had happened, and all the parents are trying to get that released with no avail.
That's so, and Congressman, this is something that because obviously now this is where, the elected representatives of these taxpayers that seem to hit a brick wall when they're trying to protect their kid. Now they look to members of Congress because these policies, and then of course the DOJ, as you mentioned, their response, because after video went of Mr. Smith being arrested and everything that his family went through, you saw so many parents going to school boards demanding, transparency with these policies, only to be told find out later that they're actually being cross-referenced as domestic terrorists by our own Department of Justice. So how can we stop that? You mentioned the weaponization of government. How do we stop this? Because I mean, this is the fact that this can happen in America in this age is insane to me.
All right. Well, first of all, you got to have parents like Scott and his family stand up. We saw what happened in Loudoun County because he spoke up. The superintendent's been removed. I think it was correct. The superintendent's gone. The Commonwealth's attorney has been pulled off the case, and that's as it should be. Secondly, you got to show up to the polls with the right message. Glenn Youngkin wanted Virginia on the back of parents who were sick and tired of what were happening to their kids. Number three, you got to have Republicans who actually grow a spine, stand up, and do the things they said they would do. It's not enough to come in here and have a bunch of fancy hearings. It's not enough to be able to call a few witnesses. We need to have the Judiciary Committee, the Weaponization Committee, be having
a little bit of
not just the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
I want to go after the CDC for the list that they're now keeping on whether or not you've been vaccinated. I want to know what the NIH knew and when they knew it. I want to know what the Department of Homeland Security knew, for example, about the agents they accused of whipping Haitian migrants, which was a lie. I want to know what the intel communities know about you and me. I want to know what ATF knows about pistol braces and about a list they're keeping about what weapons I own and keeping databases. I want to know why we're paying money out of our taxpayer dollars for a federal government to be targeting you and me, Dana, and Scott Smith. That's what this is about. That's why Scott is with me today at the State of the Union, and that's what we need to see out of our Republicans in Washington.
Mr. Smith, I'll give you the last word on this because it's doubtful you weren't invited to the president's box. You're not going to be sitting up there with the First Lady and Bono, I heard, who's attending this evening. What would you like the president to know? What if you could have a message, if you could say something to the president, what would you say to him?
Well, the first thing I would say is, Mr. Biden, you need to secure the border. We don't have a country without secure borders. And now we see that with our airspace too. He's not protecting our country. We need our borders secure immediately. And then the next thing I would say is just simply, you need to stay out of our parenting rights. Leave parenting to the kids. We don't want the institutions and the governments to take over. That's wrong.
There you go. Scott Smith, God love you. I so appreciate your fight on this and your willingness to do everything that you possibly can, not only to protect your family, but also to help raise awareness as to how other families can protect their kids as well. You really helped create a firestorm movement in this country. And Congressman Chip Roy, God love you for bringing Mr. Smith to this tonight. This needs so much attention.
Absolutely, Dana. One last point. This debt ceiling fight is all connected to it. We need to stop funding the very weaponized government that is going after us. We can return it to pre-COVID levels and we can save $3 trillion. That's going to be a part of this fight. So God bless you and thank you for covering this.
Amazing point. Thank you so much, Congressman Chip Roy and Scott Smith. Thank you both. Appreciate you.